The Everlasting Wonka, Chapter 9, The Entrance. The glass elevator had set down right in the center of a courtyard area. The people were not fully aware of what they were about to see, but when the Wonkavator landed, it showed them just the tip of an iceberg, or, as Charlie would say, an ice cream berg. The Wonkavator had been made larger and was equipped with strap-in seats for 100 visitors. Once inside, a very realistic, lifelike hologram of Mr. Wonka himself appeared to kick off the tour. The famous quotes baffled, but also impressed everyone. Once locked and loaded, the Wonkavator shot straight up high into the air. When it landed once again, the doors opened to the entrance of Willy's haunted forest. The guests were reminded of the need to be more conscious and considerate of everyone and everything while in the factory/park. Immediately after walking through the old garden, They were shocked upon entering one of the largest greenhouse rooms imaginable. The thick, crystal clear plexiglass enclosed all sorts of exotic plants. When guests would press their hands against the glass, huge exotic animals lunged right into the glass, freaking out the spectators. The barrier was a foot thick, but seemed much thinner when the creatures banged into them. The guests were then greeted by a tour guide telling them there are little surprises around every corner, but nothing dangerous. Then subtly adding, nothing deadly. It was at this point that some of the guests thought perhaps they should not have come. But they soon learned that they really were safe and specific provisions were in place to protect them. They also learned that the animals in the area fed mainly on organic candy grown on the ground, as well as the much-needed cocoa bean. The visitors watched as the cocoa beans were devoured by these never-before-seen insects and creatures with names they couldn't even pronounce correctly. It was explained that the cocoa beans were sacred at times because they were the main food for all living things in the area and also cherished by the Oompa Loompas who shared the environment. An amazing feature was then introduced as the eye-opening tour continued. Right in the center of the domain was a sealed-off area. It was a complete and exact replica of Loompa Land. Remember the Oompa Loompa mentioned earlier who sold Wonka's secret? Willy and Charlie did not forget that he lied when he told Mr. Wonka that he was returning to his homeland for vacation. They had not forgotten his betrayal. No charges were brought against him officially, but rather a lush yet outlandish cell was provided for him to live in, just like he once lived in Loompa Land. Spectators had a full view of this dwelling. His everyday fight for survival was witnessed. Most of the guests found this to be sick and demented, yet they were still amused nonetheless. They also learned of the dangerous beasts that were imported. It was these beasts that produced a rich fertilizer better than any other available source in the production of the foliage, trees, and indescribable plants found only in Loompa Land. The specially constructed cable cars, better known as Sugar Skyriders, traveled directly through the center of Loompa Land. The ride provided a safe haven far above the terrain below. Each car was made from upside-down gumdrops. Children longed to reach out and touch the cotton candy clouds, but the cars were completely enclosed. At the top and end of the ride, there was an enormous movie theater. The screen was made of marshmallows and the curtains were thin fudge. Their sweet aroma filled the air. The show was the video footage of the children who went through the factory so many years ago, entitled The Lucky Golden Ticket Wieners, so that the audience wouldn't think that the word wieners was supposed to be winners. There was an immediate introduction and narration. Everyone had the opportunity to see firsthand how embarrassing, rude, and selfish those first guests were. The parents featured in the videos threatened to press charges until they found out that the footage was completely legal according to the contract they had signed. The movie was used as a teaching tool, making it clear no rebellion nor overindulgence would be tolerated. This assured that, as Wonka used to say, no one loses their head. We wouldn't want that to happen to anyone. Stay very, very calm and enjoy. Financial provision flowed in bountifully, and much more money was put into what Charlie called Scrumptious Candy School, named after one of Wonka's largest candy bars. The purpose was to train children and young adults, as well as those young at heart of any age, to carry on the art of candy making. This also ensured the factory's future. Without giving any secret knowledge of ingredients, the pupils were rewarded with jobs as their skills developed. With the reality that candy, sugar especially, raised the risk of tooth decay, the Association of Dental Hygienists generally, yet secretively, made yearly contributions to the school. They realized they profited from it as well. Meanwhile, the guests were able to enjoy gummy bear bumper cars, a taffy tug of war, licorice strip swings, and even caramel bungee cord jumps, all made of the finest ingredients, of course. Everyone was pleasantly surprised when a shower of fruit-flavored snowflakes began to shower upon them. They all stuck out their tongues to catch as many flakes as they could. Best of all, out of all the amazing and mind-blowing rides and attractions, was when Charlie Wonka Bucket would lead a tour himself. This was reminiscent of what Mr. Wonka did with all the same unpredictable shenanigans. Charlie only did this tour on the weekends that had the fewest number of people entering the gates. Attendance varied from day to day. The welcoming staff dressed like Willy Wonka kept count of how many people were allowed to enter each day. When the park first opened, any group fewer than 200 were taken on tour, this being the number of seats available on the new boat that drifted down the Chocolate River. The boat still ventured through numerous intricate channels, cascades, and tunnels. After a number of years, the news spread worldwide, and attendance was never under 1,000 people a day, at least. At times, people had to wait in line to get in as others exited. Charlie would not allow more than 400 in at a time. 4,000 in at a time. If 5 people left, 5 were allowed to enter. Some had to leave the old way because they ignored the rules and stepped out of the set boundaries. Those waiting in line hoped that someone would get kicked out, shot out of one of the garbage chutes, or escorted out by a bunch of wild yet trained squirrels. Many would wait overnight in hopes of getting in the next morning. Charlie had to come up with a way for everyone to have a chance to explore, visit, and learn what Wonka started. And so, he assisted his best Oompa Loompas. He assigned his best Oompa Loompas to set appointments. This helped allow Charlie to limit the amount of people entering the factory. After all, this was also his home. When crowds were just too large, Charlie spent most of his time with his mom and dad. Oh, how he loved and cared for them. They shared a beauty that only a good family life can provide. The satisfaction and acceptance and bonding with each other is what kept them alive for so long. On to chapter 10, the final chapter of The Everlasting Wonka.